Lab 100. Checking attendance and creating seating plans. Within Lab 100, it's possible to check attendance and also to create seating plans. Checking attendance can be important to make sure that you're not pairing students with an empty place during pairs discussion exercises or roundtable discussions. And creating a seating plan can make it very easy and quick to set the classroom up immediately as the teacher walks into the room. To check attendance, simply click on the Attendance button, select the Absent Present, and the teacher can manually click and create attendance or absence within the classroom. If the teacher requires a report of that, they can simply click Absent Present and then click on Report. And now we can see which students are present and which are absent from the class. What I'm going to do now is just make all of the students present. Another thing that could be useful is to actually create names for the students instead of numbers. This helps when collecting the data later in the class, especially if you're collecting audio material, because it will attach a name to the file instead of just a number. To give names, simply click Edit Name, select the student you'd like to give a name to, and in this example I've given student position number 1 to John, number 2 to Ali, 3 to Rebecca, and 4 to Ahmed. Once we've completed this exercise, we can quite simply close this, and it's possible to create a seating plan which can be reused by clicking on the Seating Plan button and saving this as a seating plan. I've saved this as my Spanish Year 12. Just as an example of how it can be easy to move between seating plans, I can select my English Year 11 group, and quite simply I can move to my Spanish Year 11 group by the click of one button.
Lab 100, Listening Comprehension Session. Okay, we're looking at the Lab 100 interface. Right now we can see 3 students in the class, and we can see their current recording status, and they're all on stop. What we're going to do is click New Session. We're going to select all the remaining students in the group, and select the activity from the list. As we said, listening comprehension. The next stage is to select the audio source of what we're going to use. At this stage I'm going to use the MSU, or the Media Storage Unit, and I'm going to select the hotel room audio file for the students to listen to. What I want to do before I send this out to the class is just to tell the students exactly what's going to happen in this activity. I'm going to click on Session Call, and I'm now informing the students, and as you can see by the icon, I can see that the students are listening to what I'm saying. Once I've finished giving the instructions for this exercise, I click the Session Call button again, and now I'm ready to start the exercise for the students. I click Start, and now I can see that the students in this group are looking at the hotel room WAV file and that they're doing a listening comprehension activity. I can see the durations going through, and I can see that all of the student machines are on the play mode. Right now, as a teacher, I'm in control of this session, so if I click Pause, all of the student machines would pause. Again, if I click Continue, I can do so quite easily. Once we get to the end of the actual audio file, I can click End. And now it's possible for me to save any information that's been deposited by students or teachers. I don't want to do that right now, but what I want to do is allow the students to freely move backwards and forwards through the audio file themselves. By clicking Free, I can now see that the students have full access to the audio file to do whatever they want themselves. If I want to stop that, I can lock them. And once I'm finished, I can click Exit Session. Lab 100. We're going to look now at the library mode or self-study mode for the students. And we're going to set up a session to do that. As you can see in front of you, we have our students in the classroom. First thing we're going to do is click New Session. Select all the remaining students in the class to be in this session. From the activity list, I'm going to select Library Mode. As you can see from the Library Mode, in the right-hand panel, I now have access to all of the different recordings that I want to use in my class. If I select the first one here, German Introductions, I can now give that specifically to Jack. I can take the German Meeting People and I can give that specifically to John. And finally I can take the German telephone numbers and give that to Barbara. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell the students exactly what I want them to do. In the first stage I want them to listen to the exercise, then I want them to be able to rewind through the exercise and actually insert their voice like a model imitation or a voice insert type exercise. The students can do this using their own panels and they have free access to do this. I'm going to click on Session Call just to speak to them now. As I speak to my students, you can see that the student is now listening and able to hear my voice. I've given them the instructions. I'm going to click the Session Call and now we're going to basically start the exercise. As you can see now, all of the students are working their way through by playing the exercise. If I click on Barbara, I can listen to Barbara and what she's actually doing in her own exercise. If I wanted to speak to Barbara and give her some instructions, I could do so by clicking the intercom button here. And now you can see that I'm speaking directly with Barbara. I'm going to close that. As we can see, the students are now worked their way through, and now they've played their exercise and listened to it, and now they're recording their voices. What I'm going to do is I'm just waiting now for them to stop that and to put their hand in the air on the Teacher Call button, top left of the panel, to let me know they've completed what they're doing. Once they've completed what they're doing, I click Exit Session, and I'm going to collect the student exercises here by clicking on the Collect button and selecting the Collect button here. That's selected all the students' responses. I'm now going to click Close, and the session has been exited. Lab 100, Group Discussion Activity. The group discussion activity that we're going to look at now, it's a great source of discussion activities, it's a great way of learning new vocabulary, and a great way of really motivating students to be interested and do different things in the classroom. Creating a group discussion activity is a very simple method. First, we click New Session. We're going to add all of the remaining students to that session. Next, from the drop-down menu of selecting the activity, we're going to select the group discussion. In terms of our source, we're going to leave this as none. What I've done in preparation is I've created some discussion questions which I've added to a Word document. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this Word document available on the projector, which the students will be able to see in the classroom at all times. What we're going to do next is we're going to actually put the students together into groups. At the moment, we have 3 students per group, and we can see all of our students here are added to group 1. If we had more students in the classroom, we would be able to increase the group size or reduce the group size, and we can obviously choose fixed groups, looking at students that are sitting close to one another, or we could randomize the groups, or completely select things by manual process. What we want to do now is we want to start the students off in their discussion activity. So, I'm going to select the fixed groups and now click Start on the activity. What the students can do now is that all the students within that group are now be able to discuss the discussion activity and to engage with one another, learning new vocabulary and to discuss topical areas that will be of interest to them. I can click on one of the students if I want to listen in. Now I'm listening to what Jack's saying and Jack's interaction with the rest of the group, and if I want to intervene, I can do so by simply clicking on the intercom. Now I can join the group discussion and add my comments and points. Once I'm happy with that, I can move by closing and move across to listen to John's input as well. This is a very simple method of me keeping control of the group, but also making sure that the exercise and the discussion activity is running smoothly. Once I've completed the exercise, I can click End, and I can collect the activity itself so that we can listen back later. I'm not going to do that this time, so I'm just going to close the session. Once I've completed, I click Exit the session.
Pairs discussion for the Lab 100 system. What we're going to discuss now is how to set up a pairs discussion. Pairs discussion is a great way of setting up a class and immediately via one click setting up pairs. The other thing that can be good as a benefit for this is actually that you can set up the pairs and then change them after the pairs have had their chance to discuss things. Let me show you. First of all, we click New Session. We clicked all the remaining students into our pairs discussion group. We select from the activity menu the pairs discussion. Right now I'm going to select my source as none. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a file here which I'm going to place onto the projector with the questions that I'd like the students to discuss. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start talking to the students to explain what we're going to do. I do so by clicking Session Call. Right now, as you can see by the icons here, I'm speaking directly to the students, and I'm going to give them information to tell them that we are doing a pairs discussion exercise. Once I've completed giving the information, I click Session Call again. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to randomize the pairs. As you can see right now, Karen is paired with Peggy. Peggy is with Karen. Charles and John are paired together as well. I'm going to randomize this. By clicking that, you can see now that the pairs have changed. This is great if you want to have short pairs discussions in a class where you give 10 minutes for the discussion and then quickly change the pairs afterwards. What we're going to do now is we're going to start the activity. By clicking Start, the students will begin to discuss in pairs. Right now, as we can see, the students are discussing with each other, so John and Karen are having a discussion. If I want to listen into their discussion, I can do so by clicking on the icon here, and right now you will see that we are listening in to Karen and we can hear the conversation that she's having. If I wanted to actually interject and give some information to Karen or to John, I could do so by clicking the intercom, and right now, as you can see, I am actually speaking directly to Karen and to John in their pairs discussion. I'm going to click Close, and now I'm going to listen in to Charles and Peggy. As you can see, right now we're listening into Charles and Peggy, and if I click the intercom, you'll see that I can speak directly with both of them. Finally, if we imagine now that this exercise has now paused, let's pause this exercise. What we want to do now is we want the students to discuss the second question on the projector. I can do so again by clicking Random, and Random again, and now you can see that the students have been paired with a different group. And to continue, I can press Continue the activity. Once the activity has come to an end, I click End and I exit the session.
Lab 100, the model imitation. What we're going to look at now is the model imitation activity. This is a great activity for getting students involved in pronunciation exercises, intonation type exercises, but can be used for a multitude of different things such as translation, etc., etc. To perform a model imitation exercise, we're going to click on New Session, choose all the remaining students in the class to be part of that session, select Model Imitation from the drop-down menu of activities, and right now, for the audio source, I'm going to select the cassette player. What I'm going to do is just give the students some instructions by pressing Session Call, and as you can see right now the students are listening to me as I give them instructions. Once I've completed giving them the instructions, I can then click Session Call Off. When I'm ready, I can click Start. What happens when I click Start is the audio file from the cassette player will be played to the students, and they will be able to insert their voice and record their model imitation. As I click Start, you can see now that all the students are now recording or able to record. If I were to take Jack and I wanted to listen to what Jack was doing, I simply click on Jack and listen in. If I wanted to help and give some support, I can click on the intercom button. What I'm going to do now is close that. At the end of the activity, I can press End, and this will bring to an end the model imitation activity for the students in the class. What I want to do now is I'm going to click Save. What will happen when I click Save is also it will take the cassette recording that I've used as my source, and it will digitize that and place that on the Media Storage Unit, or MSU. I've done so. I'm now going to select English Cassette 1 and save. And that's now been saved. I'm also going to collect the student responses in. That's been collected and they're all ready. Now I'm going to click Close. And as is customary with this type of activity, I want to allow my students to listen to their own recordings to make some self-assessment for themselves. I do so by clicking Replay. And as you can see now, all of the students are able to listen to their own recordings and compare themselves with the master track. Once that's finished, I click the Replay button one more time, and now Exit Session.
Lab 100. Individualizing teaching and creating multiple sessions within the same classroom. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at creating multiple sessions using the same group of students. This is extremely useful and is a benefit when you have a large class and you want to keep all the students motivated doing different activities. This gives you the option of giving one group a listening comprehension activity, one group a model imitation, another group a pairs discussion or group discussion, thereby keeping everything moving in the classroom and keeping the students motivated, and thereby also individualizing the types of tasks to the students that require extra help or any needs in that sense. Okay, what we're going to do now, first of all, we're going to call all the students and we're going to speak to them all before we start the activity. By clicking All Call, right now I'm communicating with all the students in my class. Once I've finished, I click All Call again, and that stops the communication directly with the students. Next, I'm going to set up the first session. I do so by clicking New Session, selecting the students in this session, and I can do so by using the lasso. So I'm selecting these two students, and those two students will be added to a listening comprehension activity, and for that I'm going to use the MSU, or the media source, as my source area. I'm going to select the file American Slang and click Open. Right now what I want to do is I want to click Session Call, and I want to speak directly just to the two students in that session. Right now, as you can see, I'm speaking with Peggy and with Karen, and they're going to be doing the American Slang as a listening comprehension. Once I've finished talking to them and giving them their instructions, I click Session Call again, and right now I can start their activity. As you can see from the addition at the bottom of the page here, you can see that the blue students, Peggy and Karen, are attached to the listening comprehension activity using the American Slang file. What I want to do now is set up a second session within this group. As I click New Session again, and what I want to do now is select all of the remaining students. So again, highlighting them with the lasso. As we can see now, this has been color-coded to the second activity. Right now I select the activity, and I want them to have a pairs discussion. The source file, I'm going to click None for audio source, but what I'm going to use is I'm going to use my file here, which I'm going to actually add to the projector ready so that they can see it. Before I start, I'm going to now click Session Call, and now you can see I'm speaking directly with John and Charles, explaining what they're going to do. The other thing that you can see is that we've now obviously paired together John and Charles. If we were to do a group discussion, if we had more than 2 students remaining in the class, we'd be able to randomize the students who were talking to one another as pairs. Okay, once we've finished speaking to John and Charles, we click Session Call again, and we click to start the session. Right now, we can see that both sessions are running simultaneously. Okay, if I were to listen in on John and Charles' pairs discussion, I could do so by clicking on John and Charles. Right now I'm listening to them. If I wanted to give any information or speak to them directly, I can do so by clicking on the intercom. Once I've completed what I want to say, I click Close. Obviously, in Peggy and Karen's case, because they're doing a listening comprehension activity, there isn't probably not much point in me speaking directly to them. However, what I can do now is I can click on the session, and I can see now that they've actually finished their audio comprehension session. So I can end that session. If I want to collect any of the materials in, if I could do so, I would be able to collect them by clicking Collect. But now I'm going to close. If I wanted to now start Peggy and Karen doing something different, let's say for example a reading practice, I can exit the current session and I can set up now a reading practice session for them. I can select a source. There's no audio source in this case, they're going to use a website that they're looking at, and I'm going to speak to them directly. Thereby I've now given them a session call. I'm speaking to them directly, giving them instructions. Once we're complete, I can click Start and they can start their next activity. Whilst this is reading practice, if I want to listen to them, I can do so very easily by clicking on Karen and listening into what's happening. At the same time, I can also click to the intercom to speak directly with them. As you can see, this is a very quick and easy way of having multiple sessions within the same group. And again, also very quickly and easily can you move the groups of students from one session to the next just by sitting with the teacher's machine, and you can observe the entire class. Once I've finished, let me close down all of my sessions. So I'm going to end the reading practice session for Peggy and Karen, and I don't want to collect the responses this time. I'm going to click Close, and I'm going to exit that session. And now we have John and Charles' session. I want to end that session, and now we're going to exit that session as well.
Lab 100 reading practice exercise. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a reading practice exercise using an internet web page as the source. As we can see the classroom in front of us with our students, what we're going to do now first is click New Session. Select all the remaining students in the class to be added to this session. From the Select Activity menu, I'm going to select Reading Practice. The next step is to select the source. In this case, from this list I'm going to select None, because I'm going to use a web browser as my source. First of all, I'm going to speak to the students and give them some instructions. By clicking on Session Call, as you can see now, I'm speaking directly to the students. I'm going to explain to the students that they read through the web page that's going to be shown on the projector, and that when they have completed the exercise, that they please press the teacher call, which is in the top left hand of the student panel. Okay, what we're going to do now is to start the exercise. I'm going to select the web page. Again, what this allows me to do is to use this morning's news as a reading activity, therefore making it extremely relevant and interesting for the students in the class. I select the web page. Once I have this ready and available, I'm going to move this across to the projector so that they can read through from that as a source. Okay, what I'm going to do now is to click Start. What you can see now is that the activity has started and the students are now recording. As a teacher, if I want to provide support to the students and listen to them, I can click on each of the students and listen directly to what's happening on their panel and how they're recording their own voice. If I want to help them out, I can do so by one extra click by clicking on Intercom. And now I can speak directly with the student, and this can be shown seeing the interface here. Again, one click and I can remove myself from that, and when I close I can move to the next student and listen to them. This gives me access to all the students and allows me to be able to listen into them without necessarily having to listen to the entire recording of every single student. What I'm going to do now is just wait a few seconds, and this should be about the time that the students have finished the exercise. And right now we can see that they've pressed their teacher call button, and this has shown me that they've completed the exercise. What I'm going to do now is to click End, and I'm going to collect the exercises in from the students. By clicking on Collect, it will give me access to all the student files. I choose the actual file format that I want, and then click Collect. And as you can see, this is now saving. What I'm going to do after these are all been saved is actually replay the exercise to the students. I can do this by clicking on the Replay button here, and this will allow the students to listen to their individually recorded tracks and thereby be able to listen to themselves and to be able to comment on their own recordings and their own voices. Okay, now the student recordings have been collected, I'm going to click on the close button. What I want to do now is to let the students listen back to their own individual recordings. By clicking on replay, the students are now going to take their teacher call off their own student panels, and as you can see, Barbara is now listening directly to her recording of her own voice. Lab 100, the recorded response activity. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a recorded response activity. In this activity, I'm going to use a web page as the source file, and I'm going to ask the students questions, and they're going to record their response as the answers. To start the session, I'm going to click New Session. I'm going to select all the remaining students in the class to be active on this session, and from the drop-down menu, I'm going to select the recorded response activity. At the moment, I'm going to select the audio source as None. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the web page, and I'm going to select the web page. This page will be broadcast on a projector in the classroom for all the students to be able to see. At the same time, I could quite easily hand this out as a printed exercise as well. I'm moving it across to the projector now. What I'm going to do now is by clicking on Session Call, I'm going to speak directly with the students and explain what I expect of them. I'm explaining now to the students that what I'm going to do is I'm going to be asking them questions, and that I'm going to expect them to give the answers based on the news article which they can see on the projector screen. Once I've given the instructions to the students, I click the End the Session Call, and right now I'm going to select the teacher microphone as my source. As I want to start the activity, I'm going to click Start. The first question I ask of all the students is what is their name. This gives me information so that I can see who's recorded which of the activities. What is your name? Where did the tsunami hit this morning? In which country was the earthquake this morning? And so on. This will carry on, and what I'm doing now, as you can see, is leaving a gap after my question for the students to record their responses. The students themselves are recording their responses, and if I want to see that, I can click easily on Recorder Status, and I can see that all the students are recording. Obviously for this activity, because my voice and my microphone is the source, it wouldn't be very easy for me to be able to listen into the students themselves. But what I can do now is I can end the session, and I can collect the student responses. Once I've collected the student responses, and I'm happy with that, I can exit the session after closing this activity. If I wanted to, I could allow the students to listen back to their activity by clicking on the replay button, and now we can see that all the students are listening back to their activity. Once I'm happy with that, I click the replay again, and then I can exit the session.
Lab 100, Quiz Mode. Quiz is a great opportunity for teachers to engage their class, to gain immediate feedback of the students' understanding, and to also have a little bit of fun. Setting up a quiz session can be very easy. First, we select New Session. Select all the students you'd like to be in this session. I'm going to select all remaining. From the drop-down menu, select the quiz activity. And the audio source for this game is going to be the teacher's microphone. I'm going to ask the questions of the students and ask them to give me the answers. What I'm going to do now is click Session Call, and now I'm speaking directly to the students to give them instructions as to what's going on. For the purposes of these instructions, I'm going to play a true-false quiz with the students, and I'm going to be asking them some questions. Once I've completed giving the instructions, I click Session Call again, and now we're ready to start. So, by fixing the time, I'm going to give them 5 seconds to answer these quiz questions by clicking in this box. Let's ask the first question. Helsinki is the capital of Finland. True or false? Once I've asked the question, I'm now going to give the students the 5 seconds to start answering. Okay, since the time was fixed, this has stopped automatically for me, but if I'd left it as manual or unfixed, I would have had to press the stop button. So, what we can see now is immediately that the students have given 3 correct responses, or 75% of them feel that Helsinki is the capital of Finland, and only 25% of them think it's false. For later purposes, what I need to do is I need to select the correct answer and save this. Okay, now we're ready to ask the next question. Stockholm is the capital of Norway. Again, we're going to press start and open up the time for the students to answer. Okay, our 5 seconds are up. We can now see that 75% of them have answered false. What I need to do now is identify the actual correct response, which is false. And once we've finished the exercise and asked all the questions, we simply click End the exercise. What we see now is a report, so we can see that John has answered everything 100% correct all of the time. For example, Wendy has answered all of them incorrectly, therefore she has 0%. If we want to print this exercise report, we can do so by clicking the print button, or we can save it for later. At this stage I'm just going to close this, and now I'm going to exit the session.
Okay, we're going to do the Lab 100 Audio on Demand session now. By clicking on New Session and selecting all the remaining students from the class, I'm going to select the Audio on Demand activity. Audio on Demand can be used as a self-study, allowing the students to access a certain number of files in their own time. It could also be used in preparation for examinations, where the students could listen back to old listening examination materials. What I'm going to do now is select the length of the recording to be 15 minutes. And right now I'm going to get my list of potential language teaching materials that I could use for the students. By double clicking on the MSU file, it gives me access to the MSU, and I can now select the activities that or the exercise and materials that I wanted to give to the students. I'm going to select these 5 activities, and what I want to do now is to create these so that the students can access them in their own time, so that I don't have to be looking at exactly what the students are doing at all times. To do so, I click on Report, and in the report this gives the instructions to the students of how to access the file using their own user panels. I'm going to put these instructions onto the projector, which will be open for the students and the students can see at all times. From now, the students can actually access any of these pieces of material themselves. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly open the session by giving them a call and speaking to them directly and letting them know what to do. I do this by clicking on Session Call, and now I'm speaking directly to the students. Once I've completed giving the instructions to the students, they can now in their own time select the activities and the materials that they want to listen to first. And right now we can see that Barbara is listening to German number 2, John is listening to the calling names and now recording his own voice, and Jack is listening to the hotel room activity. I can now leave the students to do this on their own, but at the same time, if I want to listen into any of the students, I can do so by selecting the student with one click and listening directly to what that student's doing. If I want to speak directly with the student, I can do so by clicking Intercom and speak to them, and once I've done, I can click Close. Once the activity or the lesson has come to a close, I can now collect in all the activities and all the materials that the students have produced. But at the same time, if I were to leave the room and turn off the system, the activities and the materials would still be accessible to the students to be able to go in and do in their own time. To close the session, I click Exit Session, and now if I wanted to, I could collect the activities. In this case, I'm not going to, but I'm just going to close the session itself. Lab 100. Copying files to the Media Storage Unit, or MSU. It's recommended that teachers copy their materials for teaching across to the MSU. This can make things easily accessible for self-study activities, but again can also be used for any other activity such as listening comprehension or voice insert or model imitation activities as well. The process of copying materials across to the MSU is a very simple one. Firstly, we click on the menu, followed by copy files to and from the MSU. What's going to happen now is the screen will be split into two. On the left hand side we will see the local computer, and on the right hand side we will see the media storage unit. To copy materials from the local computer to the media storage unit, we can do so by selecting the file area and selecting the files that we want to send across to the MSU. As we click on the button in the middle, we're sending the files directly across to the MSU. These will be transferred into a different format which will be available from the MSU automatically once I click OK. Once I click OK, this will overwrite those files and those have been transferred across to the MSU. They're now available to assign as activities or to assign to self-study activities for the students. Again, on the other side of things, if I wanted to copy back from this MSU back to the teacher's computer, I can do so by selecting the file that I would like to send across, selecting the file format, and pressing back and sending across to the local computer or to the USB stick in this case. Once I've completed this exercise, I can click Close.
Lab 100. Teacher login and personalizing the activity list. Within the Lab 100 system, it's entirely possible for the teacher to personalize the system for their own use. This can be done very easily by creating a new user or having the teacher log in. This is easy to do by clicking on the menu button, followed by the properties, and enabling teacher login. I can do so quite easily. I'm going to click OK. What I want to do now is I need to close down the system and close it down. I'm now going to relaunch the system, and because of enabling the teacher login, it's given me access to this window here. What I'm going to do first is click Create New User, give it a name, click OK, select that user, and click OK. What I can do now is I can begin to personalize the system just for me. As a teacher myself, I'm not performing any formulated assessment, and I don't want my students to have access to the self-study. I'm also not going to be using the system for interpretation or interpreting exams. So, I click Menu, My Settings, and what I'm going to do now is go to the activity options. Within the activity options, I'm going to disable the exercises that I do not want to complete. Okay, so now I've created my own list of exercises that will be unique to me and therefore personalize the system directly for me. One of the other things that I can do is change the name of some of these things. So for example, we might want to call reading practice Read Out Loud. We might also want to change the phone conversation to phone role play. And if we want to get into even more detail, we can select the advanced options by clicking on ADV next to the actual exercise type. Within the ADV, for example in phone role plays, I would like to record the student track. Therefore I can do so quite easily by clicking Record Student Track and clicking OK. Okay, what I've done now is I've created my personalized settings. I've completed the action, so I'm going to click OK. And now let's have a look at creating a new session. As I click Create New Session, select all the remaining students in the class, and then select the drop-down menu, we can now see the personalized settings that I have. So for example, the phone roleplay, or the reading out loud which I edited the names of, and also the list is edited down. What I'm going to do now, before moving out, is to close down the system itself. And as I leave the classroom, I click Switch User, which means that the next teacher who comes into the classroom can log in as themselves and use their own personalized settings.